There are very few things on this planet that give me the same feeling of superiority as drinking coconut water. Being able to jam by myself without any accompaniment is one of them. So today we're taking our three favorite chords, G, C, and D, and we're gonna jam around with ourselves using three pieces of information. We're gonna do a very beginner one to start with, and then we're gonna do maybe a more advanced, dare I say, jazzy one to end with. But you all know how to play a G chord, a C chord, and a D chord, right? I'm assuming so anyways. If not, check out the Patreon. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna take several pieces of information that we can apply to any of these three chords, okay? So the first piece of information is gonna be the major pentatonic scale, which you probably already know, but I wanna play it like this. Okay, so here's the G major chord in just a regular traditional position, where the third fret of the E string is our G note, okay? So this is the root note, and we're gonna grow just like a tree grows from a root. We're gonna grow those frets from it. So we have root note, 3, 5, 7. Notice how I'm going pointer finger, a whole step, and another whole step. Basically 2 frets at a time. So 3, 5, 7, pointer finger, ring finger. I can slide it there. I can jump there if you want to be crazy. If you want to have that coconut water with the pulp in it, then use your middle finger for the second note and the pinky for the third note. That's some crazy talk right there. I'm not even that superior yet. I'm working on it. But I like this move right here because it lines us up with the A and the D strings, 5th fret and 7th fret. So 3, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, which is essentially the same thing as using the major pentatonic position like this, but I think this has a little more utility, okay? That's the first piece of information that we can spread across any major chord we encounter. So like I said, G major, C major, and D major are chords you always see together, the 1, 4, and 5 in the key of G. So let's do that off of each root note, okay? I want to actually keep it on one string to start with, then we'll start going across the strings. But basically we have that root note and that piece of information. The C would be 3A or 8 on the low E string. So now it's the same pattern. 8, 10, 12, 10, 12, 10, 12. And then D would be the same thing. 10th fret, 10, 12, 14, 12, 14, 12, 14, okay? So one way to think about it is if you're playing like a G to a C to a D, you could replace any part of that chord's territory with C, D, G. Okay, so that's the first piece of information. Before we get to the next one, let's just do kind of like an example of how we can put these together, right? Let's come up with like a strumming pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then some space to do the thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's the beautiful thing about this pattern, because even though it's the pentatonic scale, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes that we're playing, even though they're just 5 different notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The octave, and then the second note again, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then we have that last beat, the and of 4. Again, if we're kind of cutting them in half, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 7 notes, and then we're using that 8th spot as just some time to buy us some time to get back to the root note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It gets better if you jump around. See, you can kind of just go. There's an infinite amount of ways that you can kind of just mess around with that. But it all starts with that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. C, D, G. So that's a good example of just being able to fill those spots if we just have 2 bars, 2 4 counts of each chord, and then that first 4 count is going to be the chord with a little bit of rhythm on it, which kind of implies what's coming afterwards, right? So I think that's a great way to just really, essentially you're spanning the entire fretboard. The lowest note is going to be the 3rd fret, and then the highest note goes all the way up to the 14th fret. That's it. You know, if you don't need to impress anybody else, you've already got the coconut water with the pulp. Once you go from 3 to 14, come on. Plus, you already know the open 1, 2, and 3 chords from just doing the cowboy chord stuff, right? Second piece of information. We're going to do the same notes, but in the higher register down across the strings, right? So that's when this kind of thing comes into play. These higher ones, right? So again, usually people think of triads when they think of this kind of thing, right? Where it's just a G major chord, but on the top. So 3 on the high E string, 3 on the B string, 4 on the G string. But we can play that same kind of pentatonic thing if we just slide into the major 3rd, so the 4th fret on the G string, which is a B, and then do this. So we have our major 3rd, and then a 3 5 3 5, and then backwards, forward and backwards. So get that into your fingers, and then we can incorporate that into any of the chords, right? Again, I always line it up wherever my pointer finger is because, again, the low E string and the high E string are going to be root notes. So we're sliding in to that major 3rd, and then there's that same position. Okay, we do the same thing with the C, D. Okay, so now let's do the same thing with the same chord voicings, essentially, but then we're going to jump up into the G, B, and E strings. 1, 2, 3, 4. See how that works? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And it's a much different sound when you go lower than when you go higher. You can even mix and match. See, I just did the G chord with C's major pentatonic. And that's the beautiful thing about G, C, and D, or the 1, 4, and 5 in any key or progression, is because just because you think of, all right, the C major stuff is I'm going to line this up with the 8th fret, and I'm going to do that, then I'm also going to have that. Those are still notes in the key that the other chords are in. So just because you equate this with C major, we know that there's a C major in the chord progression. I can jump back and forth between maybe G's lower notes that I'm thinking of kind of swapping out with a G major chord, and then switching back to C. So for instance, that would sound like this. G, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Let's go to C's part. Now, even though it does kind of have a different type of sound, we're still kind of getting around and getting ourselves more familiar with just these shapes and forms, and then eventually you can start fluidly blending them all together. But I think it's a great idea to start thinking about these ideas as chord specific, because the melody that is drawn out from chord tones, essentially notes that are either in the chord, and then the next extension of that, notes in that pentatonic scale, will give you a better idea musically of how all this stuff fits together. Speaking of music, if you do have original music, you need to get it up online. This video is sponsored by DistroKid. DistroKid is the best, as far as I'm concerned, the only service for getting your music online. It has a bunch of different tools and stuff. You can kind of like submit your stuff early for playlists. You can choose a genre, because playlisting is really the only one of the main ways to kind of break in and have other people listen to your music. If you put it on playlist and share it with your friends and all that kind of stuff. It is so inexpensive to sign up with DistroKid. You have unlimited uploads depending on which tier you get, but they're all unlimited. And again, just kind of get your stuff out there. I think it's a great motivating thing to actually force yourself to release original music or covers. They also have a really easy way to license covers. Super simply, they take care of all the money. They put it in a bank. You can withdraw it whenever. I'm a huge fan of DistroKid. I've been using it ever since I started putting music online. Also got some new music coming up, so definitely stay tuned. Click on that link in the description, because you actually save a percentage off of DistroKid, and they've been a great sponsor of mine over the years. So, if you love me, if you care about me, if you fancy yourself a coconut water purveyor, also sign up for DistroKid. It is the coconut water of music distribution platforms. Now, let's add another piece of information to this. This is where we're going to get a little more advanced. We're going to do 2 chord voicings that will kind of flesh this out even more, okay? We're going to stick with major 7 chord voicings because those are my favorite chord voicings if you've ever seen a video that I've made before. So instead of G major and C major, the 1 and the 4 chord, we're going to play G major 7 and C major 7. Because so much of the importance of this lesson is mirroring things. What I mean by that is being able to apply the same concepts to different chords in the same key. I think that's really, really important. And when you have major 7 chords, those exist on the 1 and the 4 chord in any key, right? So in the key of G major, we've got G major 7. This is one of my favorite chord voicings here. I've still got that same root note. We're still growing that musical tree from this root note, but now we're getting ring finger and pinky, 4D and 4G, middle finger, 3 on the B string, the D, okay? So the only thing we're adding to this scale is the F sharp. Okay, so you can think of that as just the 4th fret, but basically that note is right there. And then we're gonna actually double down and do another chord voicing that looks like this right here. This is a really fun one, okay? I'm gonna take it from the bottom where it's just 7, 7, 7, 5, okay? Now basically this is kind of like based off this D major, this D-shaped G major, right here. One of the prettiest chord voicings you'll ever see, right? So G. We can go back and forth. Just kind of get comfortable doing that. And then we can do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then now I'm doing the same thing, but I'm adding that F sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4 and... So I'm kind of jumping back and forth and sandwiching these kind of little pentatonic runs in between 2 different voicings of the same chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Maybe I can go high on the next one. C. G. See how I did that? I did all those different parts. I started with this chord. I'll go to D's. Remember, those higher versions of the D major chord to C. Okay, so it's really just about taking these 3 pieces of information, that pentatonic low spot, the same notes higher up, and then different chord voicings in the same key. Now this doesn't have to just work in the people's key, the key of G. Let's go something wildly different. B flat. All of these connect, right? So in my head, what I think of when I think of these chord voicings, I think of my root note, the B flat, is the 6th fret on the low B string. Now we do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. See how it's easy because you just start with the root note and then all the shapes are exactly the same, even though the frets kind of get a little bit thinner, so it's not the exact same reach every time. It's the exact same concept every single time. The reason I like how these fit together is because we have a root note here, and then we can kind of just, in my head, I'm thinking of getting that octave right there to kind of jump. In fact, that's just kind of good practice, just to take 2 shapes and then kind of jump around and do that. So for this, we can have the 1 chord, B flat. And then we could go either down a string to get the 4 chord here, which is E flat, right? The 6th fret on the A string. Or we could go a 4th up here. Again, without a cutaway. It's a little bit trickier, but you can always kind of just, do different things. We could do the whole thing on the A string. And again, now I'm just using that same chord, major 7 on the 4 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 6th fret on the A string. I'm going to use a different chord voicing, 6, 8, 7, 8. And even though I'm using a different chord hand shape, I still get to use that root note. 2 frets higher, 2 frets higher. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The 5 chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The 4 chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The 1 chord. 1 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord, 1. So, really easy to do, just taking different pieces of information, being able to match them to a root note, which is just a single note. Again, I think that's the way to do it, right? You just find, locate a single note, and then everything just kind of expands and branches off. From there, you're gonna start making music. You're gonna start putting it on DistroKid. You're gonna start drinking coconut water when it's buy one, get one free, because that's the only time that I'm ever really allowing myself such luxury. But whenever I do it, I make sure people watch me drink that coconut water because that's the main part. Anyways, so thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring the video. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, hit me in the comment section, Instagram or the website. Also, rocking out the D'Angelico. I love this guitar and the Super amp. So I'll have links to all this stuff in the description. Let me know what you think. I'll talk to y'all soon.